Welcome to the Frontier Leader Show. Today, Martin is speaking to Rob D. Willis.
AI is great for finding stories because it's good at finding patterns in things. And you can do this on a huge scale. I mean, if you've got a enterprise level transcriber in your team, it can be looking for stories the whole time and surface them and tell you and find the particularly good ones. And that will give you the material that you need in order to become a great storyteller. If you just tell it to write you a story, it's not going to do a very good job. But it can structure things, it can find things, identify things, as long as you tell it what to look for. And I think we all kind of know what to look for. Maybe, people like me are a little bit better at describing it. But generally, I think we can all take a transcript, get AI to look through it, find the stories, get it to structure it in, a clear structure, find a good hook for it as well, and it'll be pretty good.
Hello and welcome to the Frontier Leader Show. I'm Martin Wheatley, and each week I speak to leaders, coaches, practitioners and technologists working out what good leadership looks like in an AI-shaped world. If you still have the app open on your phone, please hit follow and subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. And if you want some practical tips to starting to lead with AI, I have a number of resources available at www.theAILeaderLab, and the link will be in the show notes. But today, in a time where AI can generate 1,000 polished slides that say absolutely nothing, how and what we are communicating becomes even more critical. So today, I'm pleased to be saying I'm speaking to Rob D. Willis. Now, Rob is an executive storytelling coach who has gone from producing top 10 hits in Germany to working with executives, coaching them on how to use narrative as a strategic advantage. He's worked with companies like HelloFresh, Moneybox, Salesforce, and Babbel, and he is the host of Chief Story Officer podcast, which I highly recommend you listen to after this episode. But Rob, welcome to the show.
Hello, Martin. Nice to be here.
For those of the listeners who don't know who you are, can you just give us a quick introduction how somebody goes from producing music in Germany to coaching executives with how they tell stories?
Yeah, well, I make videos on Instagram, and on my profile there, people might notice I have a bit of a weird job title. I call myself a strategic story producer. And I noticed that the work I'm doing is very similar to what I used to do in a music studio. So it used to be a songwriter, an artist would come into the studio, they'd have a 8-minute long song with no hook, no chorus, and we'd have to unpick what are they trying to do so they can connect with their audience. And I realized that that's kind of what I do now. That's what I feel I'm good at, is spotting the pattern, spotting what people are really trying to say and finding a way to help them connect with their audience. So it is, I understand, a little bit of a funny career path I've had over the years, but I feel there's definitely a kind of red thread that goes through all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comparison, absolutely. I've never really thought of it like that. But yeah, I suppose any leader or anybody who's given a message out, we're always told that, to package it up in a kind of a story form to help guide people through it. And I'm assuming, do you work with, who are the kind of people that you work with on a day-to-day basis?
There's a big variation, but it is usually people who are trying to achieve some sort of change. So it could be a vision, or it could be like a leader who wants to get people bought into what he's or she is trying to say and where the company is going, making sure that there's alignment. It could be the leader of a particular team within a company who needs to make sure that their tools, what they're producing, are appreciated by leadership, but also used by other members of the company. There was one guy who he just wanted to create a YouTube channel, and he really wanted the story of what he did to come across in those videos. And he thought, rather than just get a YouTube expert, he wanted to get a storytelling expert, because he knew storytelling is the way that you really connect with people. So I do have quite a varied day working with all sorts of companies, from Pfizer to a dude on his own, doing his own thing.
Yeah, quite a varied engagement. Yeah. And one of the things that you've obviously got your podcast, which I mentioned before, which is really useful. But on your Instagram account, which one of the things that I really like watching actually is where you go through and you dissect the structure of a presentation, an announcement, a speech that people in the public arena has given. I watched your Hannah Fry one where you dissected how she starts with when a time, or when you do this kind of structure. And then more recently it was Andy Burnham. And I just think from a leadership point of view, I just wondered if you could touch on just briefly what you kind of pulled out of the way that Andy Burnham first kind of introduced himself to the world as the new Prime Minister.
Yeah. He is an interesting one. I've broken down a few of his speeches because he is a good communicator, I've got to say. Wherever you sit politically, I think we can all admit that he's able to connect with people. And that, I believe, he's able to do, or what I noticed in his speeches, is he's very aware of how he's positioning himself in relation to the audience. That might sound a bit abstract, but I'll make it a bit more concrete. So the pronouns that he was using in that speech, I and we, really stuck out to me. And he would alternate between I and we. And he was very conscious about what kind of content he would use the I pronoun for and what kind of content he would use we. So he was talking about, I take responsibility. I promise to do this. I will make a pledge to end rough sleeping. On the other hand, we was more about change politics. We're going to change politics. We're going to take power out of here and put it around the countries. Things that are bigger than him that he can do with the country. And it was all kind of sealed up nicely when he says, I will do my very best, but I ask you to pull with me. So he is the leader. He realizes that. He realizes he has responsibility, but he also understands that he needs people to come with him in order to achieve that. And that really jumped out at me when I was watching his speech. There's probably a million other things that other people took away from it, but that for me was in that particular speech the masterpiece, the masterstroke.
Yeah, I mean, it was completely different. I mean, I didn't pick up quite on the nuances like you have, obviously, but the way that he didn't have a lectern there, and he did pan around to the audience a lot more than just staring just down a camera like previous people have done or whatever. And I did think it was more of a compelling speech, if you like. But it's a big, or I think from my past role where I've managed large departments, and you've had to do a change. I think it's sometimes especially hard when you're trying to do that large-scale transformation in business. And it's very easy like I could write a presentation or an announcement, but then it'll have to go through HR, it'll have to go through compliance, it'll have to go through risk. And it just gets distilled. And then at the end, you've got a very HR correct, non-emotional, presentation that is just flat. And I just wondered how you must have seen this with some of the people you've worked with in the past. How do you kind of balance, trying to bring the Andy Burnham lessons, if you like, into giving something as potentially dry as a change transformation speech?
Well, I mean, you think HR are tricky. Try working in the political party where every line is going to be debated, every line, because they know people are going to read so much and they're going to take things out of context. And if you're not careful, as you say, I'm not sure whether I would call it distilling. I would say confusing. Because then they're bringing in all of these other ideas, and it really is kind of death by committee in the end. This is something that I've thankfully had little need to really deal with. I've mainly been working with internal communication within companies when there's been some kind of change. And for some reason, I've thankfully managed to avoid it. But I know that if there is a particular message you need to get across, you must fight for that message. You must make sure that you get past those particular gatekeepers, if we call them that. And that means you have to have a strategy to do it. You can't just think about the one presentation or the one moment that you're going to be standing in front of people and delivering your Andy Burnham moment. You need to think about, okay, how am I going to get the stakeholders bought in so they are with me in my message? And that is something which I imagine Andy Burnham is very good at doing, as he's able to speak in what to me appears a very authentic way.
Yeah, it's I mean, like I said, I think he did come across like that. It is very challenging. The way that you mentioned buying, I know you did your, was it Present to Succeed in Sofia in Bulgaria recently? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the title of your talk was Telling a Compelling Story and Getting Buy-in. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was that. Is there a certain structure or a certain mechanism that you use to help draw out those key bits that make that more successful?
I think the first thing you need to do before you start worrying about structures and frameworks and all of that, the thing that you need to do is be strategic about what you are saying. That means you need to have some kind of goal for your piece of communication, and also realize that your piece of communication doesn't exist in a vacuum, and what people understand from your communication won't just depend on the words you say, but on a whole host of other factors, that some of which you can control, some of which you can't control, but you must be aware of each of them in order to speak in the right way. So these are not my questions. This is from a story scientist called Kendall Haven. His starting point is ask the 3 questions, which are, what do you want to happen? Why is it not happening? Who needs to make it happen? That can focus you a great deal. It can tell you who to speak to, what should be happening, and give you clues as to how you can approach making them take the action. But then I think, beyond just one interaction, you need to break it up into 2 or 3 probably. And for each stage, ask, what has to happen for me to deem that successful? What is the next step in this journey? Because it is a journey, isn't it? Any sort of change. If you try and get people to do or work completely differently after one presentation, you're going to be disappointed, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I have one presentation to kick it off. If you just leave it at that point, I mean, it's doomed to failure, isn't it? You can't just let it. You've got to over communicate. In my opinion. And are you seeing people come to you who are using AI that's trying to help them create the perfect pitch deck or the perfect presentation that you then, I don't want to say rip apart, but coach them through how to instill those story qualities in there?
I think the challenge people usually have, so I mean, when you say people just kind of put it into AI, I think that kind of challenge where it's kind of bland and not really saying anything, that I generally see it more mid-level. In my experience. I do work with people like that. I do training and I can teach them structure and I can basically get them to have an opinion because that's what we really want them to have. I find another challenge, though, is the other end of the spectrum, which is people have put so much thought into this. Their investor deck, for instance, has gone from being 8 slides to being 40 because there's so much they need to say, or there's so much they want to say, there's so much nuance that they want to get across. And they're now too close to the idea to really understand, to see the wood from the trees, to understand what they're actually trying to say. So if you ask them to explain what it's about, they'll talk to you for an hour. You still won't really understand. It's my job to make sure that we pick out and I see what is the message and that we can make people connect with it.
And how do you typically go about doing that? Especially when it's someone like you said they've looked at it, they've been working on this deck or this presentation, they've got like 1,001 facts in their head, they've passed it through, potentially passed it through ChatGPT, Claude. How do you start to really strip that back to get to the essence of what they need to be delivering? Yeah,
so the starting point is, we already mentioned, what are we trying to achieve? The second, who are we talking to? Because that's going to affect the story that you're telling. It's their story to understand rather than yours just to say. It's not about what you need to say, it's about what they need to understand. So if you can understand that, what is your audience's problem? It probably sounds a bit cliche by now. Everyone says that, but it really is important. It is fundamental. Then you put it into structure, and I find a pretty good structure for talking about strategy is context, direction, action, and consequence. So context, we need to say what is going on now. Usually what is changing in the world? Why now that we need to do something? The direction is kind of the stakes. Where do we end up if we do nothing? Why is nothing changing? Why are we not doing anything? And what does it mean for us? Then the action, what are we actually going to do? Which we try and reduce to 3 steps because any more and people get confused. Or 1 step and 3 reasons, but 3 is kind of a magic number. And then consequence, where does this get us in the end? One of my first videos that did really well was me breaking down pretty much this structure in a film called Margin Call. And in a scene, the CEO, John Told, played by Jeremy Irons, is talking to Sullivan, who's an analyst. And Sullivan, he says, he basically wants to know what's going on. And Sullivan stands up and starts introducing himself and saying, I work with Mr. Bridges, and all the stuff that we usually do when we go on stage and just faffing about. And he says, stop, stand up in a clear voice. Just tell me, what is the nature of the problem? And then he gives him that. Then he says, what does that mean for us? So that's the direction. Whereas, what's the implication? What are we going to do about it? What's the action? Where does this come back to us? Like, what happens next? That's the consequence. So that if you can answer those 4 questions, you've basically got what people are worried about. Now, of course, there's nuance and there's different slides. Like, let's say it's an investor deck, you need to talk about where you fit into the market. But this generally fits under those 4 main beats that you need to have. And you need to be able to tell that in 90 seconds to 2 minutes. So just get it across. This is what's happening. This is where we're heading and what it means for us. This is what I want to do. And this is the consequence of our actions.
Yeah. So just to recap, so you've got context, direction, action, and consequence.
Exactly.
That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I have seen the scene which you've just mentioned. I do remember, actually. It's quite, I've seen it analysed. I think I might have seen it analysed on your Instagram.
Okay.
But yeah. The bit that you mentioned within that, I mean, that is a very strong structure. Absolutely, I can see exactly how you're playing that through. Before when you mentioned there about, at the beginning where he stands up and he says, my name's whatever, and I work in here, and I work with this person, and this is what we've done, and blah, 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 blah. There's that many different opinions and perspectives and ways to start a presentation or a pitch or whatever. You've obviously got those 4 steps. If it was somebody just walking onto a stage, are there any other kind of key kind of opening gambits or opening kind of openers that people could use that are kind of tried and tested, and what's your kind of favourite?
So you want to hook attention, essentially. I reckon most people would probably be able to intuitively work out what is a good hook. And if I was to, and I do this in my workshops, I say, what's a good way to start a presentation? And people who are not experienced presenters, they're going to come up with ideas which are pretty good. Start with an anecdote, start with a rhetorical question, start with a big statistic, start with a bold promise, start with a contrarian statement. Not one of them says the phrase, hello everyone, my name is Rob D. Willis. Today I'm going to talk about storytelling. And not one of them says, can you hear me? Can you see me? Let me just share my slides. Which, for some reason, seems to be the 2 ways that people start presentations. And we know that it's not right, but still we do it. But what I think you're getting at is, I think the principle is more important than how you achieve it. You need to get people interested. You need to create a kind of burning question in your audience's mind so that you answer with your presentation. You look at the best TED Talks, it very often is like that. I mean, Simon Sinek starts with rhetorical questions in his, if we're talking about leadership, what was it? When he's talking about the golden circle, he says, why do some companies fail when others succeed? And he's talking about the outliers. Why does that happen? And these become questions, why does that happen? Let's not treat them as exceptions. Let's work out why. And then the answer is, of course, they have their why. So overall, anything which creates a burning question in your audience's mind is going to get them interested and hook your audience. Okay.
And just coming back to the kind of technological side of things, AI is everywhere, as we know. I use it every day, and there's all this media narrative about AI slop and things just being churned out over and over again, as I said in the intro. Do you think or should I say, what do you think are the benefits of having AI for someone who wants to be more vocal and tell their story? Is there a place in it for a leader?
Stories are great. AI is great for finding stories because it's good at finding patterns in things. So one thing I did with one client is we get people to tell stories and we record the sessions. It can then extract the stories, put them in a structure, tell me which stories are worth going further into, researching more about. And you can do this on a huge scale. I mean, if you've got a enterprise level transcriber in your team, it can be looking for stories the whole time and surface them and tell you and find the particularly good ones. And that will give you the material that you need in order to become a great storyteller. If you just tell it to write you a story, it's not going to do a very good job. But it can structure things. It can find things, identify things, as long as you tell it what to look for. And I think we all kind of know what to look for. Maybe, people like me are a little bit better at describing it. But generally, I think we can all take a transcript, get AI to look through it, find the stories, get it to structure it in, a clear structure, find a good hook for it as well. And it'll be pretty good.
It's interesting you said that, because I bet a lot of people won't have even thought about looking at their own context that their business is generating, potentially to find the breadcrumbs that make up a decent story. It's quite, a lot of people I speak to the minute I even transcribing the calls, it's not happening yet, but, it doesn't need to be a fantastical slaying a dragon type story. It could be something baked in within your organization that's part of the everyday, I suppose, is what you're building on that.
Yeah. Just get your team to sit down and get them each to tell you what is a moment they feel they made a bit of a difference at work. If everyone does that, that's basically, they're usually going to start talking about a story. And they're going to talk in story terms. And it may not be very big. It may not be, I rescued the company from bankruptcy, and without me, none of us would have jobs. That's not useful, that kind of story. What's useful are the small moments. You helped someone out, you listened to them, you saw an opportunity that helped. These are the things that people connect with because they're small, because there's human moments. And that's why storytelling works, is because of human moments, because we can understand it, we can picture it in front of us, rather than huge ideas about the vision and the future and etc.
Yeah. And I guess from a leader looking at this across their team, they don't want to do this. Coming back to the one-off and done point that we made earlier on, when you are doing a change or whatever, you want to kind of do this on a continuous basis, don't you? To build up your bank of stories that you can pull on when you need to inspire and motivate, I suppose.
I was talking on my podcast, shameless plug, to a guy called Sean Callahan, who is godfather of business storytelling. Really cool guy. He's mainly focused on these anecdotes, on these small stories. That's his thing. And he told me this great line: the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed, which means somewhere in your organization, the kind of behaviors that you want people to be adopting, they're already happening. If you bring that to the surface, if you amplify that, and you can do that with stories, then other people have a roadmap, a blueprint for how to adopt these new behaviors themselves. So it's just about looking at what you have already. And yeah, sure, you need to also think of a bit further down the road, and it's a little bit more fuzzy. But having those more immediate stories of things that are already happening will do a lot for your momentum as an organization.
Yeah, pulling out the good things that are already happening and the behaviors that you want to exemplify.
I'm just thinking of this now, but I guess it's a little bit like, have you ever done gratitude journaling? When you...
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not very persistent.
No, me neither.
Some mornings I do, some mornings I don't.
But it's kind of the same thing on an individual basis, isn't it? It's like looking for the moments where you were grateful in that day. And focusing on that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. How are you using AI and technology in what you do? Obviously, there's, like we said, a lot of it, the stories are personal and you don't want to take away from that. But we've obviously mentioned the transcription basis across companies. But how does Rob D. Willis currently use AI in his world?
So I am in the position where I'm working on a lot of different projects with different people simultaneously. And it's just, my mind is just exploding if I try and understand and remember everything that I'm doing at any one time. So when I'm working on an ongoing basis with people, we'll transcribe our sessions together. I've connected Obsidian to Claude via MCP, and it's got folders for each of my clients and a hub and notes for each of the sessions. I can then use AI to go through the transcript, create detailed notes, create follow-up emails and actions for people. And then when I have my next session, I start asking it questions like, where were we? What was going on? So I can kind of get back into the mindset that I need. And also it will surface things that I might have missed or forgotten about and opportunities that might exist. Then, once you've got that, once you have the insights, which is good at finding, you can then use it to create assets, designs. I'm not a designer, but Claude Design does it pretty well. And it looks better than I can do with Canva.
It's interesting how you built that. I mean, I have something similar where I don't use Obsidian. I just use a folder structure essentially. But you can kind of port what you've done in Obsidian to ChatGPT, to Claude, to Gemini. You can plug it into whatever you want, whatever the best, quote unquote, best tool of the moment is. But that's interesting. And again, it's using it's not replacing anything that you're doing, but it's making your impact scalable, isn't it? I think is the best way to describe that.
It's a great sparring partner as well.
Mm.
So when I'm designing a workshop, it's pretty bad at recommending exercises. The exercises it come up with are pretty rubbish. But the rubbish version gives me an idea for a better version. And I think, oh no, this would be a cool thing to do. And then it's remembering I just need to transcribe it, my thoughts, it will organize things, update a document, and then I just need to kind of paint by numbers essentially. It's a very good sparring partner. You could have a team to do that, but Claude Max is going to cost a lot less.
Is there anything that surprised you using it that you didn't think you'd be able to do, or you didn't anticipate? I mean, any questions it's caused you to ask?
Isn't it surprising us every single day? Like you see the things that it can do and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. But I'm doing things from like, if I want to see a bit of clothing I want to try on, I just thought, okay, I'll take a photo of the clothing. I'll take a photo of me. So let's have a look at how it looks. And then I can see whether I like it or not. It's really cool. It's like I say, it's not creative yet, and it's not surprised me in that way. But the ability it has to scrape so much information is really useful, and I feel helped me adopt certain habits which have been beneficial. Like I kind of fell off the wagon reading, and I got it to create a sort of reading plan for me. I told it kind of what I was interested in. It knows me anyway, knows what I'm interested in. I uploaded my Goodreads, everything I'd ever read on Goodreads. Yeah. So it kind of understood what kind of books I liked and what I was interested in. It gave me a little plan for 3 weeks. Like, this is how you get back into it. This is what you can do with your phone, so you're not just reaching for that. It's very useful.
It is, and I mean, the amount of things you can plug it into now is astounding. And trying on outfits, I must admit, that was the first time I've tried that, not with an outfit, but I was wanting to figure out how to more appropriately shave my beard, and it gave me a proper cutting guide all the way down my face. I'm yet to try it properly, but we'll see how that turns out anyway.
Yeah, but but I was talking to another guy about this earlier today. It's always better when you have an expert using the tool rather than someone who doesn't know it.
100%.
So I can put together a deck with Claude Design, but it's not going to be as good as a designer would make with Claude Design. They're going to understand what makes it good. Now, I don't know what will happen in the future when everyone just grows up with AI already and never had to do it themselves. That's another discussion. But if you have the expertise, you're able to ask it better prompts and you have a better idea of what good looks like.
And coming back to what we originally started with, it can't make your own stories up for you, can you? No. It can help surface them, but absolutely they need to be your stories at the end of the day. But look, just conscious of time, I think that's been fascinating, trying to understand, what you look at, and some good structures there in terms of the context, direction, action, and consequence. If we move into the kind of second half or second portion, should we say, well, we give three key takeaways for the listener to take away from this. I mean, you've already given a couple of structures there, but if you want to add to them, then feel free.
Okay.
What's your first thing that the listener could take away?
First thing, I'm going to return to it from earlier because it's that important. Be strategic with your communication. What do you want your audience to think, feel, and do after you speak to them or send them an email or post something? If you don't have a clear idea of what you want to happen and why it's not happening already, then it's going to be very hard to tell a compelling story. So that's number one. Number two, create some sort of story spotting habit. I find the best storytellers, and I wouldn't count myself as one of these people, but the best ones I've met are very reflective. They're very good at looking back at their experiences and picking out those moments. I keep trying to train myself to do it. Maybe I have to get AI to help me. But they keep a journal. They talk about what is a moment that something changed for me during the day. Could be a small thing, but they're able to bring up these examples afterwards. So it fuels their story-driven brain. So if you can build up some sort of storytelling habit, find one thing a day that is worth telling someone else, you are ahead of 99% of people in the world. And lastly is the output of all of this. We've talked about, what's our goal? We've got the raw materials. Now you need to go and create some sort of content. And I don't think you need to necessarily release it to anyone. It's better if you do, but you need to either write or make a video or start a Substack. I don't mind really what it is, but you need to have some sort of output to do with what you do. You deal with leadership, you create content about that. I do with storytelling, I make stuff about storytelling. But only through volume are you going to get to any stage where you sound like what you think you should sound like. Yeah. And what I mean by that is we all have this idea of what we want our content to be, and then we try and actually do it, and it just doesn't quite come out like that. And we're always like a little bit embarrassed at first. I know I was at least. But everything you want in life is the other side of cringe, I've heard say. So find some way that you can start sharing something with the world, and that will get you to understand your voice in better than any framework will.
Yeah, that's a really valuable takeaway, is that, because I know when I first started posting on LinkedIn, I mean, I kept changing the version, updating it, tweaking it. It must have taken me hours to release that first post, and it got like 1-2 likes, and it's like, what's the big? It's quite a big mental hurdle, I suppose. It depends, it might be a generation thing maybe, but it's quite a big mental hurdle to suddenly start releasing your thoughts into the world, in my opinion, especially on like LinkedIn when it's a professional platform.
Yeah.
And it's only through that repetition, like you said, that you just get used to it, and you kind of get used to the fact that it doesn't really matter what other people say. You're getting your voice out, you're tweaking, you're refining how you're finding your voice, aren't you, really?
Yeah. And part of that, I think it needs to be, this is a part that some people miss, is it needs to be useful to the people who you're writing or speaking to. There's quite a few, people, I think they want to be lifestyle influencers. They want to just, they think they're so interesting that the world is just going to become fascinated with them. That kind of content is not what I'm talking about. I think being a storyteller is about being useful to the people who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't just be a keyboard warrior in the middle of the night.
Exactly. Throwing
comments on people's posts for whatever. Lovely. That's been fascinating, actually, Rob. That's been really useful. I think there's a goldmine of takeaways in there throughout. Where's the best place for people to find you?
I post every day on Instagram, just at Rob D. Willis. You'll find me there. But the same thing for TikTok, at Rob D. Willis, and YouTube Strategic Stories, because something I did wrong with my username, which meant I couldn't have Rob D. Willis. But anyway, there you go. You'll find me on all the major platforms, and feel free to visit my website, robdwillis.com, and send me a message. I'm always open to answering questions or hearing what people are up to.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Martin.
If you found this useful, hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already, and a review or rating genuinely helps the show, and I do appreciate it. And it keeps my mum happy. There is a growing number of resources at the AILeaderLab.com for leaders who are looking to start implementing AI in their workplace. The link will be in the show notes. Until next time, bye-bye for now.